If you find yourself wanting to do nothing but lie in bed, if every fiber of your body pulls you towards silence and stillness, your soul may be sending you a warning that deserves deep attention. That heaviness in your limbs, that invisible weight pressing you into the mattress, is not just physical fatigue or the desire for comfort. Beneath this seemingly ordinary behavior lies something profound, a psychological signal that Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in modern psychology, encountered repeatedly in his patients and even within himself throughout decades of clinical practice. There are moments when your body feels like a silent stone resting on the bed. The closed curtains turn your room into a protective cave, shielding you from the noise and expectations of the outside world. And rising, simply placing your feet on the floor, can feel like crossing an entire desert. This is not laziness. This is not weakness. This is a deep inner call emerging from the most intimate layers of your being. A silent cry from a soul that has lost its connection to the natural flow of life. Picture a 35-year-old woman, successful, admired, respected in her corporate career. One day, without explanation, she begins canceling social events, skipping lunches, avoiding video meetings. Instead, she stays home wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ceiling for hours. Her friends tell her to snap out of it. Her family suggests vitamins or exercise. Her co-workers exchange quiet comments about her absence, their eyes filled with judgment. But inside her, something resists all these external fixes with surprising force. And that resistance is not rebellion. It is not indifference. It is her soul asking for space, for silence, for retreat. Something our productivity-obsessed society rarely understands or values. In the lens of depth psychology, this intense urge to withdraw, to remain in bed, to avoid participation in the outer world, carries meanings far beyond what our achievement-driven culture is willing to acknowledge. Jung taught that when psychic energy can no longer flow through the channels of our conscious life, it naturally retreats into the underground of the unconscious. It pulls itself inward, like a river disappearing beneath the earth, gathering force in hidden places. And in today's world, this retreat is more common than ever. We live in a constant storm of stimulation, endless notifications, unrealistic demands, virtual meetings that drain the spirit, and the pressure to always be available, always be productive, always be performing. This chaotic rhythm fractures our attention and slowly drains our vital energy. Our nervous system, designed for cycles of action followed by restoration, is pushed into perpetual activation, creating a state of silent exhaustion that accumulates day after day. In a world like this, the home, and especially the bed, becomes more than a place of rest. It becomes a sanctuary, a last refuge where defenses finally lower, where the soul can begin to speak again. Jung observed throughout his clinical work that this kind of withdrawal is not a malfunction to be fixed, nor a personal defect to be overcome. It is a necessary descent, a psychological winter, a moment when the conscious mind grows quiet so the unconscious can reorganize itself, heal itself, and prepare the individual for a new phase of life. And you, watching this now on Unshakable Mind, may be feeling this exact call without realizing it. You may be interpreting it as weakness, when in truth it may be your inner self trying to pull you back to your center, trying to protect you from a life lived too far from your own essence. When the soul calls for retreat, it is rarely without reason. As you continue here with us, allow yourself to breathe, to soften the tension in your shoulders, and to simply observe your own inner landscape. If this message resonates with you, let me know in the comments. Your voice matters deeply in this community. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Unshakable Mind so you don't miss any of our upcoming explorations into the hidden dimensions of the psyche. Your journey matters, your inner world matters, and here we honor it. When the psyche begins to withdraw, when your inner world suddenly demands silence, this is not a flaw or a collapse. It is a symptom carrying its own intrinsic wisdom, an organic intelligence that lives deep within the human soul. When your psychological system becomes overloaded, when essential aspects of who you truly are have been ignored for too long in favor of external expectations, the body responds with a powerful and seemingly inexplicable impulse to retreat. It is as if a deeper intelligence knows exactly what you need long before your conscious mind, trained by a culture obsessed with productivity, can understand or accept it. In this fragile psychological landscape, the home transforms into a living mirror of this internal process. The walls that once served only as physical shelter now become protective fortresses of the inner world, creating a sacred environment where psychic reorganization can unfold away from intrusive eyes and suffocating expectations. Each room begins to echo like a chamber of the psyche itself, a place where the shadow, those neglected or repressed aspects of your personality, can finally rest, waiting for the moment when you are ready to recognize and reintegrate it. Carl Jung discovered this pattern not only in his clinical work, but also in the universal symbols that arise in dreams, myths, and ancient rituals across cultures. To Jung, the physical retreat from the outer world often reflects a fundamental psychological necessity. He called it the introversion of the libido, a natural redirection of psychic energy toward the inner world when the outer world becomes too demanding or too misaligned with the authentic growth of the individual. This introversion is not a pathological escape. It is not weakness. It is not failure. It is a natural compensatory movement of the psyche, a shift toward healing and inner reconstruction. What looks like physical stillness, hours spent lying in bed avoiding the outside world, is often the visible expression of an essential inner process. It is the psyche requesting a pause, performing a silent ritual of protection against the overwhelming stimuli and relentless demands of modern life. In a world where we wear multiple social masks, switching between roles to survive each context, the persona, our public face, eventually becomes exhausted. And when the persona can no longer bear the weight of demands placed upon it, the psyche pulls back, seeking refuge in stillness. The body lying on the bed, seemingly unproductive or inert in society's eyes, is often a sign that the A-self, the central organizing force of the entire psyche, is calling for an urgent withdrawal. It is the self attempting to preserve your inner life, to protect your essence, and to reorganize your psychological structure from within. Just as a tree pulls its sap inward during winter to survive the harshest conditions, only to bloom with renewed strength in spring, your psychic energy sometimes must retreat to unseen depths. These inner processes are not immediately visible, they do not produce measurable results, and they often contradict everything society tells you about success, effort, and action. Yet they are essential for long-term growth, clarity, and our transformation. Through the lens of Jungian psychology, this moment of stillness is not something to fight. It is something to understand. It is your inner world attempting to restore itself after long periods of fragmentation. It is your energy gathering strength in the dark, reorganizing, preparing you for a new phase of life that cannot begin without this necessary descent. And as you explore these insights here with unshakable mind, remember that your experience matters. What you're going through has meaning. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice may be the very thing someone else needs to hear today. And be sure to subscribe to Unshakable Mind, so we can continue this journey together into the profound depths of your psyche. There are several dimensions that intertwine within this phenomenon, each one revealing something essential about the human psyche. First, there is the unavoidable encounter with the personal shadow, the hidden and neglected parts of ourselves that often rise to the surface when we isolate, when the noise of the outer world fades just enough for the inner world to finally be heard. In those moments of solitude, we become available to recognize truths we've long avoided. Second, there is a natural reassessment of the relationship with the collective unconscious. We begin questioning the values society imposes on us, the pressure for constant socialization, the glorification of endless productivity, the expectation to always be on. These cultural demands shape us more than we realize, and withdrawal offers the rare opportunity to step outside them and reconsider who we truly are. Third, this period brings a profound recalibration of social identity. The persona, the social mask we carefully craft to navigate the world, temporarily dissolves. Without it, we come into more direct contact with our authentic self, the parts of us that exist beyond roles, labels, and expectations. And finally, this entire process serves as a natural response to the modern taboo of solitude. In a culture that worships visibility, exposure, and constant availability, withdrawing becomes almost an act of rebellion. A return to the self in a world that rewards self-abandonment. When Jung studied these states of apparent stagnation in his patients, he discovered something remarkable. Beneath the still body lay an intensely active psyche. The deeper the retreat, the more vibrant the internal movement. Patients reported vivid symbolic dreams, powerful insights about lifelong patterns, unexpected emotional breakthroughs, and the resurfacing of long-forgotten memories. These experiences surged upward as if the psyche, finally relieved from the burden of constant stimulation, could redirect its energy toward essential inner work. Jung documented numerous cases where these periods of physical immobility preceded major psychological and creative breakthroughs. One woman, who spent weeks barely rising from her bed, emerged with astonishing clarity about the professional changes she had resisted for years. Another patient who had withdrawn for months, worrying everyone around him, eventually reconnected with artistic gifts he had abandoned in childhood, sparking a new phase of life, rich with creativity and meaning. Jung himself lived something similar during his legendary confrontation with the unconscious, an experience so powerful it became the foundation of the Red Book, one of the most important and mysterious works in depth psychology. His withdrawal was not collapse, it was metamorphosis. But Jung also warned that this natural process can be easily misunderstood, interrupted, or distorted by society's judgment and by our own fear. When we interpret the desire to withdraw as laziness, weakness, or a lack of motivation, we interfere with a psychic transformation that is trying to unfold. It is like pulling a delicate plant out of the soil just to check whether the roots are growing. The act itself disrupts the very process we intended to support. if we ignore the soul's call for necessary retreat, if we push forward without rest, without listening, the consequences can ripple through our inner world. The house within us, the structure that holds our psychological integrity, can begin to crack. Dreams lose coherence. Thoughts become fragmented. Emotional exhaustion deepens. And a subtle inner numbness begins to spread, signaling that something essential has been damaged by our refusal to stop. Here at Unshakable Mind, we honor this inner journey, this quiet descent into yourself. If this resonates with your experience, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may help someone else recognize their own inner call, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to Unshakable Mind so you can continue exploring the profound depths of the psyche with us. Your inner world is vast, intelligent, and alive, and it deserves your attention. When this inner call is ignored for too long, the psyche often raises its voice in ways we cannot overlook. Dreams may turn into recurring nightmares, as if the unconscious is knocking louder and louder on the door of awareness. Strange physical symptoms can appear: tensions, pains, exhaustion, attempts of the body to speak what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. And the soul begins to feel imprisoned inside its own temple, trapped within the very physical body it inhabits. Jung noticed that many cases of emotional collapse and burnout were rooted in this persistent resistance to the psyche's natural need for withdrawal. But hidden inside these difficult moments lies a profound invitation to listen with humility and genuine curiosity to what rests within this apparent silence. This is not a personal failure nor a moral weakness, despite what modern culture constantly insinuates. It is a natural phase of transition and transformation. The shadow, those forgotten or suppressed parts of ourselves, asks to be finally seen and welcomed as a legitimate part of who we are. The heart, overwhelmed by unrealistic expectations, asks to be heard in its most authentic desires. Long periods of lying down can be a natural response of the psyche, or a deep introspective process, depending on the attitude with which we walk through this mysterious inner territory. Jung observed that the critical difference lies in the conscious posture we adopt. We can resist, fight, and judge ourselves, intensifying the internal tension, or we can approach the experience with curiosity and respect, transforming it into a portal to self-knowledge. If you're going through this now, spending hours in bed, staring at the ceiling or the quiet walls of your room, it may be helpful to reflect on what this state is trying to communicate. What in your life is draining too much of your energy? Which essential parts of yourself have been ignored for too long in order to meet external demands? Which dreams or authentic needs have been postponed while you carried the expectations of others? I invite you to share your experience in the comments. Has your body ever refused to follow the world's accelerated rhythm? How did that period unfold for you? What insights, if any, emerged from that forced withdrawal? Your sincere story might illuminate the path for someone who is living something similar right now. And if this message resonates with you, if it brings clarity, comfort, or a new perspective, leave a like and subscribe to Unshakable Mind so we can continue this journey of Jungian wisdom together. The deeper challenge, then, is not to overcome this state of stillness in the way our productivity-driven culture insists, but to consciously transform it into an opportunity for inner growth and reconnection with the most neglected parts of ourselves. Jung often compared these necessary periods to the ancient rituals of introspection, times when individuals in transition would withdraw from the world, not to escape it, but to prepare themselves for the next chapter of their lives. The phenomenon of withdrawal, of wanting nothing more than to lie still and retreat from the world, unfolds across several intertwined dimensions that reveal the deep mechanics of the psyche. First, there is the unavoidable confrontation with the personal shadow. Those hidden, unacknowledged aspects of ourselves that surface only when the external noise quiets down. When someone isolates, when life slows to a near standstill, the neglected parts of the psyche finally rise, seeking recognition. Second, withdrawal triggers a reassessment of one's relationship with the collective unconscious. A questioning of shared cultural values such as constant socialization, relentless productivity, and the glorification of being busy. Third, there is a temporary suspension of the social persona, the psychological mask we develop to operate within society. When this mask dissolves even briefly, what emerges is a raw, unfiltered contact with our authentic inner being. And finally, this entire process becomes a natural counter-movement against a culture that fears silence, avoids solitude, and worships perpetual availability. Jung observed repeatedly that behind states of physical stillness, the psyche often moves with extraordinary intensity. What appears to others as idleness or detachment may, in reality, be a period of rich inner transformation. Vivid dreams increase. Symbolic images return. Old memories long buried in the unconscious surge back into the mind. Unexpected insights about relationships, careers, childhood patterns, and long-ignored desires emerge with clarity. The psyche, freed from constant stimulation, redirects its energy inward, toward essential psychological work that cannot be done when we are consumed by the outer world. Jung documented remarkable cases shaped by these quiet yet powerful retreats. A woman who spent weeks nearly immobilized in her bed, eventually gained precise clarity about the professional changes she needed, but had resisted for years. Another patient, who withdrew from life for months and deeply worried his family, resurfaced with a renewed connection to his artistic nature, an inner fire he had abandoned since childhood. Jung himself lived through one of the greatest retreats recorded in psychological history during his confrontation with the unconscious, later documented in The Red Book. These periods were not signs of collapse, but of metamorphosis, moments when the psyche deepened its roots before flowering again. However, Jung warned that this natural process is fragile and can easily be distorted. Society's misunderstanding, its quickness to judge withdrawal as laziness, weakness, or avoidance, can suffocate the transformative potential of this inward turn. When individuals internalize these judgments, they often interrupt the very healing their psyche is trying to initiate. It's like digging up a seed to check whether it's growing. The interference destroys the organic process meant to unfold on its own. And if the call of the soul is ignored repeatedly, the consequences for psychic integrity can be significant. The inner house begins to crack. Dreams may turn into nightmares. Fatigue intensifies. Emotional numbness spreads like a shadow. The body starts shouting what the conscious mind refuses to hear. Still, Jung emphasized that the real opportunity inside these moments is not in forcing ourselves to get up or in striving to match society's frantic tempo. The opportunity lies in listening deeply. The shadow asks to be seen, the heart asks for honesty, the body asks for rest, and the self, the central organizing force of the psyche, asks for silence to realign its fragmented energies. This state of lying down for long hours can either be a natural response or a profound inner initiation. The difference lies in the attitude we bring to it. We can resist the experience, judge ourselves and worsen the internal split, or we can approach it with curiosity. What is this moment trying to teach me? What desire have I ignored? What dream have I postponed? What part of me has been silenced for too long? In ancient cultures, individuals often withdrew from society during major transitions, entering symbolic inner caves to reflect, reorganize, and emerge transformed. Our fast-paced world has forgotten these sacred intervals, but the psyche has not. It still creates pauses when necessary. That moment when you want nothing but stillness may not be stagnation. It may be your psyche constructing a temporary sanctuary so that something new can be born. Jung believed that when lived consciously, these periods often precede profound growth, integration, and expansion of awareness. Breakthroughs that cannot occur amid constant noise. As you listen to this message on Unshakable Mind, consider that what feels like inertia may actually be the early stage of transformation. In the next part, we will explore deeper distinctions between healthy withdrawal and psychologically harmful stagnation, and how to turn this inner descent into a path of meaning. If this resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. Your voice helps others navigate their own inner journeys. And subscribe to Unshakable Mind, so we can continue expanding this exploration together. Your inner world matters, your silence has meaning, and something inside you may be preparing to awaken. When we look closely through a Jungian lens, several signs reveal when this deep withdrawal is actually serving a natural and healthy process of inner reorganization. One of the most consistent indicators is an increase in dream activity. Dreams grow more vivid, symbolic, frequent, almost as if the unconscious seizes the opportunity to speak more clearly when the outer world grows quiet. Another sign is a subtle inner sense that something is happening. Even if nothing appears to be moving externally, it feels like an invisible gestation, a quiet alchemy unfolding beneath the surface. And a third sign is the spontaneous emergence of insights, intuitions, or flashes of clarity. Moments when the mind connects pieces that the noise of daily life usually keeps apart. But Jung also recognized when withdrawal crosses into stagnation or psychological danger. One warning sign is a total loss of connection with the outer world. 4. Excessively long periods with no internal or external movement toward return. Another is the absence of that inner sense of process, replaced instead by a heavy emptiness, a directionless despair that offers no symbolic guidance. A third red flag is the rigidity of the pattern. No moments of fluidity, no minor openings, no small impulses toward life. Everything becomes frozen. From a Jungian perspective, the goal is neither to remain indefinitely in withdrawal nor to deny it outright. The healthy path lies in honoring this natural movement of psychic energy, receiving its gifts, recognizing its wisdom, and then gradually discovering a new way to re-engage with the world, carrying forward whatever transformation took place within. Symbolically, Jung saw the urge to stay in bed as an archetypal expression of death and rebirth. Not literal death, but a universal psychological pattern of transformation. The psyche contracts so it can expand. It retreats so it can return with new strength. Just as winter precedes spring and the seed must lie dormant before it germinates, the human psyche follows rhythms of activity and rest, expansion and contraction. The problem is that modern society only honors one half of this rhythm, the active half. Quietude is dismissed, rest is shamed. the inner winter is treated as failure. Because of this cultural blindness, individuals going through necessary periods of retreat face not only the inner challenge of transformation, but also the outer burden of judgment. The pressure to react, overcome, or get back to normal often arrives before the inner process has completed its natural course. What could be a regenerative psychological movement becomes a source of guilt and alienation. Philosophically and spiritually, this state resonates with what Jung borrowed from mystical traditions and called the dark night of the soul, a period when familiar sources of meaning collapse, leaving us face to face with the unknown within ourselves. These are not moments of punishment, but invitations to descend, to question, to shed, and eventually to be renewed. So how do we work with this state consciously, in a way that honors its transformative potential? Jung offered a powerful principle: approach the experience symbolically rather than literally. Instead of asking, "Why am I so tired?" or "What's wrong with me?" ask instead, "What is dying in me? And what is trying to be born?" This symbolic approach changes the entire landscape of the experience. The bed becomes a cocoon rather than a prison. Stillness becomes incubation rather than stagnation. Silence becomes communication rather than emptiness. You start to sense that the psyche is reshaping you from the inside, preparing you for a new orientation toward life. Here at Unshakable Mind, you're invited to explore these symbolic layers with depth and courage. If this message resonates with your experience, tell me in the comments what signs you've noticed during your own periods of stillness. Share what dreams have spoken to you, what insights surfaced when the world grew quiet, or what fears emerged when the silence grew long. And if this content is helping you understand your inner journey, don't forget to subscribe to the Unshakable Mind. Every week we dive deeper into the symbolic, psychological, and archetypal realms of the human soul, so you can navigate your inner world with clarity, strength, and meaning. Your retreat has a purpose, your silence has shape, and something inside you may be preparing to awaken. When Jung explored these deep periods of withdrawal, he offered several practical perspectives, timeless tools that remain astonishingly relevant today. He understood that inner transformation cannot flourish in chaos, noise, or constant demand. So his first suggestion was the creation of a temenos, a sacred, protected space where the inner process can unfold without interference. This doesn't require a monastery or a remote retreat. It can be as simple as choosing certain moments of the day for silence and introspection, or creating a corner of your home that invites stillness, a chair near a window, a floor cushion, a bedside table with meaningful objects. What matters is intention. A temenos is less about location and more about the psychological permission it grants you to listen inwardly. Second, Jung emphasized the importance of giving expression to whatever emerges during these periods of introspection. The unconscious speaks in images, symbols, sensations, and when we ignore these expressions, the inner process becomes clogged and heavy. Writing in a journal, sketching without concern for artistic skill, moving your body freely, or even speaking your thoughts aloud can create openings for unconscious material to reach consciousness. These practices keep the inner energy flowing rather than stagnating, and they make the invisible work of the psyche more tangible. Third, Jung encouraged people to look for personal symbols that arise during withdrawal. A symbol in Jungian psychology is not a simple metaphor, it is a living bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. These symbols may appear as recurring dream images, objects that suddenly hold emotional weight, animals, landscapes, bodily sensations, or even phrases that echo in the mind. Identifying these symbols helps orient your inner journey by giving shape to what initially feels mysterious or formless. Jung also placed immense importance on rhythm. Just as the breath requires both inhalation and exhalation, the psyche requires both extroversion and introversion, engagement with the outer world and retreat into the inner world. Modern society, however, tries to force us to inhale endlessly, pushing us toward constant activity, performance, and exposure. Yet a healthy psychological life requires cycles: activity followed by rest, expression followed by silence, expansion followed by contraction. From this perspective, the deep desire to remain lying down is not a defect, but a natural manifestation of the introverted phase of the psyche's rhythm. Instead of pathologizing or resisting this phase, we can learn to recognize its necessity. Working with it consciously does not mean abandoning responsibilities completely, but rather reducing them to the essential. Creating enough space for the inner process to unfold without overwhelming pressure. It means acknowledging that psychological winter is as crucial as psychological summer. At the same time, Jung never romanticized or endorsed permanent withdrawal. He saw isolation not as a destination, but as a temporary movement. One pole of a healthy rhythm that must eventually give way to reconnection. The true goal is reintegration, returning to the world more aligned, more centered, more authentic. The challenge is not choosing between isolation and connection, but discovering a living balance between them. One of Jung's most powerful contributions was his understanding that the urge to withdraw often appears at crucial turning points in the development of personality. These moments are thresholds, transitions where old identities begin to crumble and new ones quietly form beneath the surface. Withdrawal becomes an inner womb, a protective shell in which the psyche restructures itself before emerging into a new phase of life. If you are experiencing something like this, today, allow yourself to consider that you may not be breaking down, you may be transforming. And as you reflect on this journey here on Unshakable Mind, share in the comments what practices or symbols have supported you during your quieter periods. Your experience might offer guidance to someone else standing at the edge of their own transformation. If this message is helping you navigate your inner world, subscribe to Unshakable Mind. Together, we explore the deep landscapes of the psyche so you can move through life with clarity, courage, and a mind that remains truly unshakable. When these periods of withdrawal appear at significant crossroads, midlife, after profound losses, during identity collapses, the psyche is not breaking down, it is recalibrating. Jung observed that at key transitions, the inner world naturally calls for re-evaluation, reorganization, and quiet descent. What looks like stagnation is often the beginning of an inner restructuring. When we understand this, everything changes. The question shifts from, how do I get rid of this, to, what is trying to be born in me right now? And how can I create the right conditions for this emergence? This reframing is transformative. It allows withdrawal to be seen not as a failure, but as a signal, a message that something inside you is preparing to change shape. In daily life, this doesn't require abandoning responsibilities or disappearing from the world. It can begin with micro moments, year of conscious introversion. 5 minutes of quiet before the day starts, a brief pause of deep breath during work, a nightly moment of reflection before sleep. These small rituals honor your inner rhythm without demanding a drastic rupture from ordinary life. They open small doors through which the unconscious can speak. For those experiencing a deeper, more intense withdrawal, it can be helpful to introduce minimal structure, not to control the process, but to prevent complete disorientation. Even in the seeming nothingness, you can consciously alternate between different inner activities, attending to dreams, expressing yourself creatively, journaling or reflecting on patterns, or simply feeling the breath move through the body with no goal or judgment. This gentle structuring keeps the psyche from sinking into chaotic stagnation and supports the unfolding inner work. Jung noted that these dark, slow phases often precede bursts of creativity, direction, and renewed purpose. It's as if the psyche requires time in the dark, silent, unseen, unproductive, before something new can emerge into the light. Many great artists, thinkers, and leaders went through such quiet intervals before producing their most meaningful work. Outward inactivity masked a profound internal reorganization. For us, children of a culture obsessed with productivity, efficiency, and visible results, perhaps the greatest challenge is learning to relate differently to these states of quiet. Instead of interpreting them as failures, obstacles, or personal deficiencies, we can begin to see them as part of a greater rhythm of the psyche, a season of rest, a winter soil that appears barren but is secretly replenishing its fertility for a future harvest. This perspective does not romanticize the discomfort that often accompanies these moments. Jung was clear that such periods can feel confusing, heavy, unsettling, but he also insisted that there is a critical difference between meaningless suffering and meaningful suffering, between sinking into despair and walking through darkness with purpose, and often the difference lies in our attitude and understanding. From a Jungian viewpoint, this deep impulse to lie down becomes an invitation to a new relationship with yourself, a call to listen more carefully to the movements of your psyche, to trust the inner rhythm more than external pressures, to recognize that even in stillness, something is unfolding. As you reflect on this here with unshakable mind, consider sharing your experience in the comments. Have you ever felt something new emerging after a long period of quiet? How did that transformation reveal itself? Your story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear, and if this content is helping you understand your inner world more clearly, be sure to subscribe to Unshakable Mind. Together, we explore the deep psychological landscapes that shape our lives, so you can navigate moments of darkness with wisdom, strength, and a mind that remains truly unshakable. When we approach this experience not as an enemy to defeat, but as a message to decode, an entirely new relationship with ourselves becomes possible. Our inner world stops feeling like a battlefield and begins to resemble a landscape, vast, alive, full of hidden paths and quiet voices. Instead of being guided solely by conscious control, we start to open ourselves to the wisdom that rises from the depths. Instead of being driven by performance, achievement, and external validation, we begin moving from a renewed sense of meaning and authenticity. So ask yourself gently, what might this stillness be trying to tell you? Which forgotten parts of yourself are asking to be acknowledged? What areas of your life have grown empty of meaning and now require re-evaluation? Which new possibilities might be waiting for you in the silence you've been avoiding? This process of listening and discovery is rarely linear. It unfolds in spirals, moments of clarity followed by clouds of confusion, steps forward followed by apparent regressions. Jung compared this rhythm to the alchemical opus, the ancient inner work of transformation. The opus could not be rushed. It had its own sacred tempo. To force it was to ruin it. Likewise, the psyche blooms on its own schedule, not ours. And perhaps this is the most precious lesson Jung offers about this experience: the importance of respecting the natural time of inner processes, the faith that beneath the stillness something essential is shifting, the trust that invisible currents of transformation are preparing the ground for a new chapter, one more aligned with who you truly are and what genuinely matters to you. As we close this exploration, remember that Jung never promised quick fixes or universal formulas. He honored the uniqueness of each soul's journey. His work offers maps, symbols, and guiding principles, not shortcuts. The real path is forged through your own experience, your own honesty, your own courage to enter these inner territories. If this message brought you clarity, comfort, or a new way of understanding what you're living, I would love to hear from you. Share your reflections in the comments. Your voice may resonate deeply with someone walking a similar path. This community exists so we can support one another through moments of transformation, challenge, and self-discovery. And if this exploration touched you, leave a like and subscribe to Unshakable Mind. Together, we'll continue diving into the profound landscapes of the psyche, guided by the timeless wisdom of Jung and the powerful tools of depth psychology, so you can live with clarity, courage, and a truly unshakable mind.